I didn't expect to recognize him by the way he typed. That's the part that still messes with me. Not his face, not his voice, not even his name. Just the rhythm of his messages. The way he paused before replying. The way he'd type when he was thinking, like he was sitting there staring at the screen, choosing his words carefully. And somehow, in a crowded room full of strangers, that's what gave him away. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It all started about 6 months before that night, when I created a throwaway account just to vent. Nothing dramatic. I wasn't heartbroken or anything. Just stuck. Life felt repetitive. Same classes, same gym, same small circle of people who knew me too well or not at all. So I went online. I didn't use my real name. Didn't post my face. Just a username and late-night thoughts I didn't feel like saying out loud. I wasn't expecting anything to come from it. Then Isaac replied. At first, it was just a comment under one of my posts. Something simple. Funny, but not in an obvious way. More like he understood exactly what I meant and decided to nudge it instead of over-explaining. I remember staring at his reply longer than I should have. Then I answered. That should have been it. A random interaction with a stranger. But it didn't stop there. He messaged me later that night. Nothing weird. Just, hey, you still awake? And yeah, I was. That's how it started. We didn't exchange pictures. Didn't ask for names right away. It was almost like an unspoken rule between us. We kept things separate from real life. Safe. But at the same time, it got real fast. We talked about everything. Not just surface-level stuff, but the kind of things you usually avoid. The stuff you think about at 2 a.m. when you can't sleep. Regrets. Expectations. The weird pressure of pretending you've got everything figured out when you definitely don't. Isaac had this way of listening even through text that made it feel like I wasn't just talking into the void. And he remembered things. Like, I mentioned once that I hated mornings, and 2 weeks later he texted me. Survived another morning, or still suffering? It was small, but it stuck. I started looking forward to his messages. Actually, no, that's not true. I started waiting for them. It got to the point where I'd notice the time and think, he's probably online now. And most of the time, I was right. We fell into this rhythm without ever planning it. Same hours, same energy, still anonymous. We never pushed it further. Not really. There were moments where it almost happened. Like when he asked, do you ever wonder what I look like? Or when I typed out, we could just exchange names, you know, and then deleted it before sending. It wasn't fear exactly. It was something else. Like if we crossed that line, whatever this was between us might change. And neither of us wanted to risk that. So we stayed in that space. Somewhere between strangers and something more. The night I met him in real life wasn't supposed to be important. It was just a friend's birthday. Loud bar, too many people, cheap drinks. The kind of place where conversations blur together and you forget half the names you hear. I almost didn't go, but my friend insisted, and I figured, why not? I remember standing near the bar, half listening to someone talk about something I wasn't really interested in, when I felt my phone buzz. It was Isaac. Guess where I am? I smirked at the message, already typing back. Hopefully somewhere better than me. A few seconds passed. Then, doubt it. I glanced around the room without thinking. Habit, maybe. Like I could somehow spot him even though I had no idea what he looked like. Loud bar. Too many people. Regretting my life choices. I typed. There was a pause. Longer than usual. Then wait. Something about that made my chest tighten just a little. Describe where you're standing, he sent. I frowned at my screen. What? Just do it. I hesitated. It felt ridiculous, but also weirdly important. So I typed. Near the bar. Black shirt. Probably look bored. Another pause. Longer this time. And then, don't move. I don't know why, but my heart actually started beating faster. I looked up from my phone, scanning the room again, this time more carefully. People moving, laughing, shouting over the music. Nothing out of the ordinary. And then I saw him. Not because I recognized his face, but because he was looking around the exact same way I had been. Like he was searching. He was a few steps away, standing just outside the crowd, phone still in his hand. Tall, dark hair, simple clothes, nothing flashy. But there was something about the way he carried himself calm, slightly guarded, like he was observing everything instead of being part of it. And then his phone buzzed. At the exact same moment mine did. We both looked down, then back up. And this time, our eyes met. Neither of us smiled right away. It wasn't that kind of moment. It was quieter than that. More certain. like something just clicked into place without needing to be explained. I took a step toward him. He did the same. And when we finally stood face to face, close enough to actually see each other clearly, he exhaled softly, almost like he'd been holding his breath. "Benjamin?" he asked. Hearing my name in his voice for the first time did something I wasn't ready for. I nodded. "Isaac." He gave a small, almost disbelieving smile. "Yeah." There was a brief silence. Not awkward, just full, like everything we hadn't said, yet was sitting right there between us. And the weirdest part? It didn't feel like meeting someone new. It felt like finally catching up. I should have expected things to change after that, but I didn't realize just how much until later that night. The first thing I noticed after we said each other's names was how normal it felt. That's what threw me off. I mean, I'd spent months imagining this guy in my head. Not consciously, but still. You build a version of someone when all you have are words. You fill in the gaps without even realizing it. And somehow, Isaac wasn't different from that version. He was just more real. "Okay," he said, running a hand through his hair, letting out a quiet breath. "This is weird." I huffed a small laugh. "Yeah, a little." Another pause. We were standing way too still for two people in a crowded bar. People kept brushing past us, music thumping through the floor, but it all felt kind of distant, like we were in our own bubble. "You're taller than I expected," he added, glancing at me properly now. I raised an eyebrow. "You had expectations?" "Not really," he admitted. "Just didn't picture you like this." "Good or bad?" His lips twitched slightly. "Good. That shouldn't have affected me as much as it did, but yeah, it did." I looked at him more closely then, not trying to hide it. Up close, there were details I never could have imagined. The slight crease between his brows when he was thinking. The way his eyes didn't just look at you, they kind of held your gaze, steady and deliberate. It made sense, suddenly, why his messages always felt so focused. "You do that thing," I said without thinking. He frowned slightly. "What thing?" "That pause," I explained. "Before you say something. Like you're editing yourself in real time." His expression shifted: surprise, recognition. "You noticed that?" I shrugged. "You type the same way." For a second, he just stared at me. Then he let out a quiet laugh, shaking his head. "That's actually kind of insane." "Yeah," I said. "Tell me about it." Another one of those silences settled in. But this time, it felt different. Less uncertain. More aware. Like now that we'd crossed that invisible line, now that we knew who the other person actually was, there was no going back to how things were before. "So," Isaac said after a moment, glancing around the bar. "You here with friends?" "Yeah, somewhere in this mess." I gestured vaguely behind me. "You?" "Same." We both nodded like that explained everything. And weirdly it did. I shifted my weight, suddenly more conscious of how close we were standing. Not touching, not even brushing against each other, but close enough that I could feel his presence in a way I hadn't before. It wasn't uncomfortable, just new. "You want to get out of here?" he asked. The question came out casual, but there was something underneath it. Not pressure, not expectation, just possibility. I didn't even hesitate. "Yeah." We didn't go far. Just outside, down the street a bit where it was quieter. The night air hit differently after the noise inside. Cooler, sharper, real. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. We just walked, side by side. I could hear our footsteps more clearly than the music now. The distant hum of traffic. The occasional laughter from people passing by. It felt strange. Not in a bad way. Just like stepping into something neither of us had fully prepared for. "So," Isaac said finally, glancing at me, "do we keep pretending we don't know each other that well? Or?" I smirked slightly. "I was thinking about that." "Yeah. Yeah. Because technically, we've never met." "Technically," he echoed. "But also," I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. "You probably know more about me than most people I see every day." He didn't respond right away. When I looked at him, his expression had softened slightly. "Same," he said quietly. That word "same" landed heavier than it should have. Because it wasn't just agreement. It was confirmation. Everything we'd shared, all those late-night conversations, all the things we never said out loud to anyone else, they were still here. Just now with a face attached. "Does it feel different to you?" I asked before I could stop myself. He glanced at me, then away, like he was actually thinking about it. "Yeah," he admitted. "Different how?" Another pause. "That depends," he said slowly. "Do you want the honest answer?" I let out a small breath. "Obviously." He nodded once, like he expected that. Then he stopped walking. I slowed down too, turning slightly toward him. For a second, he didn't say anything. Just looked at me in that same steady way he always did, even online, somehow. It feels, he started, then stopped, exhaling softly. More intense. My chest tightened a little. Because now I can see you, he continued. And that changes things. There it was. That line. That shift. I swallowed, trying to keep my expression neutral even though I definitely felt that. Yeah, I said quietly. It does. We stood there for a moment, neither of us moving. The space between us didn't change, but it felt like it did, like something had narrowed. You ever think about this happening? He asked. I huffed a quiet laugh. Finding you randomly in a bar? Yeah. I shook my head. No, not even once. Me neither. Another pause. Then, softer. But I'm not mad about it. I looked at him. Really looked this time. And yeah, there it was again. That feeling. Familiar, but stronger now. Less safe. More real. Yeah, I said, my voice lower than before. Me neither. And that's when I realized something. This wasn't just an online thing anymore. And whatever we had before, it was about to get a lot more complicated. We didn't rush back inside. Actually, neither of us even mentioned going back. We just kept walking. Not toward anything specific. Just forward. Like if we stopped, we'd have to actually acknowledge what was happening, and neither of us was quite ready for that yet. So, I said after a while, hands in my pockets, trying to keep things light. This is kind of insane, right? Isaac let out a quiet breath beside me. Yeah, statistically, this shouldn't have happened. I smirked. What? You ran the numbers. Obviously, he replied dryly. I had a whole probability chart. I glanced at him. You're joking, but honestly, you would. That earned me a small laugh. God, that laugh. I'd imagined it before without realizing I had, but hearing it in real life was different. Warmer. Less filtered. It hit me in a way his texts never could. You're quieter than I expected, he said after a moment. I raised an eyebrow. That's funny. I was about to say the same about you. Yeah. Yeah. Online, you. I hesitated, trying to find the right word. You take up space more. He nodded slowly, like he understood exactly what I meant. That's because I have time to think there, he said. Here. He gestured vaguely between us. It's happening in real time. Yeah, I muttered. No editing. That hung in the air for a second. Then he added, a little quieter. I don't hate it, though. My chest tightened again. Me neither. We kept walking. At some point, we ended up at a small park a few blocks away. Nothing special, just a couple of benches, dim streetlights, trees barely moving in the night breeze. But it was empty. And right then, that's all that mattered. Isaac sat down first, leaning back slightly, one arm resting along the top of the bench. Casual. Relaxed. At least, that's how it looked. I sat next to him, leaving just enough space between us to not make it obvious, but not enough to ignore. For a minute, neither of us spoke. It wasn't awkward. Just heavy. You know what's weird? I said finally. What? I glanced down at my hands, then back up. I feel like I should be more nervous than I am. Isaac turned his head slightly toward me. You're not. I mean a little, I admitted. But not in the way I expected. How did you expect to feel? I thought about it. Like I'm meeting a stranger, I said. But I don't. He didn't answer right away. When I looked at him, his gaze was already on me. That's because you're not, he said quietly. There it was again. That same feeling. Clear. Direct. No overthinking. It hit differently coming from him in person. I exhaled slowly, leaning back against the bench. Yeah. A soft breeze moved through the trees above us, barely noticeable. The city noise felt distant here, like we'd stepped out of it completely. Can I ask you something? He said. Sure. Why didn't you ever want to exchange names? I huffed a small laugh. Straight to it, huh? He shrugged slightly. We're past the anonymous phase now. Fair. I thought about it for a second. I think I was scared it would ruin it, I admitted. Ruin it how? Make it normal, I said. Like every other interaction. People start expecting things when they know who you are. Isaac nodded slowly, like that made sense to him. Yeah, he said. I get that. What about you? He looked ahead, jaw tightening just slightly. Same reason, he said. Then, after a pause, and also because I didn't want you to disappear. I frowned. Disappear? You know, he said, glancing at me. Once things get real, people bail. Or it gets complicated. Or it turns into something neither person actually wanted. I held his gaze. And you thought that would happen with me? He didn't answer immediately. That pause again. But this time, I could see it. Not just feel it through text. Maybe, he admitted. I nodded slowly. That's fair. Another silence. But this one felt closer. Like the space between us had shifted again without either of us moving. You didn't disappear, though, I added. His lips curved slightly. Neither did you. We looked at each other then. Not quickly. Not accidentally. On purpose. And this time, neither of us looked away right away. There was something building there. Not sudden. Not explosive. Just steady. Like it had been growing for months, and we were only now realizing how real it actually was. I swallowed, my voice a little lower when I spoke again. This is where it gets complicated, isn't it? Isaac tilted his head slightly. Yeah, he said. Probably. But not in a bad way. He studied me for a second. Then, that depends on what you want this to be. There it was. Not a joke. Not deflection. A real question. I felt my pulse pick up slightly. Because I knew exactly what he meant. And I also knew there wasn't a simple answer. Not anymore. I leaned forward slightly, resting my elbows on my knees, staring at the ground for a second before looking back at him. I don't know yet, I said honestly. He nodded. Good. I blinked. Good. Yeah, he said, a small smile forming. Because neither do I. I let out a quiet breath, something in my chest loosening just a little. Okay. Another pause. Then, softer. But I do know one thing. He raised an eyebrow slightly. What's that? I met his eyes again. This doesn't feel like nothing. That smile of his, it faded just slightly. Not in a bad way. In a serious way. Yeah, he said quietly. It doesn't. And for the first time since we met that night, the silence between us didn't feel uncertain at all. It felt like the beginning of something we both already knew we weren't walking away from. We stayed on that bench longer than we probably should have. Not because there was nothing to say, but because saying too much felt like it might break something. It's hard to explain. There's this point in certain moments where everything feels balanced. Like if you move too fast or push too far, you might tip it into something else. Something heavier. Something harder to control. And I think we both felt that. So what now? I asked eventually, my voice quieter than before. Isaac didn't answer right away. Of course he didn't. I almost smiled at that. He leaned forward slightly, mirroring my position, forearms resting on his knees, hands loosely clasped. I think, he said slowly, we figure out if we're the same people in real life. I glanced at him. You think we're not? I don't know, he admitted. Online, it's easy to be honest. Or a version of honest. That's a very Isaac answer. That got a small smirk out of him. You disagree? I shrugged. I think you were real with me. I was, he said, without hesitation. But being real through a screen is still different. That landed. Because yeah, he was right. There were things you could say over text that felt easier. Safer. Things that didn't carry the same weight without eye contact, tone, presence. And you think being here changes that? I asked. He turned his head toward me slightly. I think being here makes it harder to hide. That one hit deeper than I expected. I held his gaze for a second longer than necessary, then looked away, exhaling slowly. Yeah, I said. I get that. Another quiet moment passed. Then Isaac shifted slightly, turning his body just a bit more toward me, not fully, not obviously, just enough that I noticed. So let's test it, he said. I raised an eyebrow. Test it how? He hesitated. There was again that pause. But this time, it wasn't just thoughtful. It was careful. Ask me something, he said. Something you wouldn't have asked online. I blinked, caught off guard. That's your idea? He shrugged slightly. Feels fair. I let out a small breath, leaning back again, tilting my head as I thought about it. Something I wouldn't have asked online. That narrowed it down more than I expected. Because the truth was, there were a lot of things I held back. Not because I didn't want to ask, but because I didn't know if I was ready for the answers. I glanced at him again. He was watching me. Not intensely. Not pushing. Just waiting. Okay, I said slowly. Why didn't you tell me sooner? His brows pulled together slightly. Tell you what? That you might actually want to meet me. That wiped the hint of a smile right off his face. And yeah, that was my answer. Because we danced around that topic more than once online. Joking about distance, timing, coincidence. Never serious. Never real. Until now. Isaac looked away for a second, jaw tightening just a little. Then he exhaled. Because I didn't trust myself, he said. I didn't expect that. What does that mean? He leaned back again, one hand running briefly through his hair before dropping back down. It means, he said, choosing his words carefully, I didn't know what I'd do if this felt the same in person. My chest tightened. Okay, I said quietly. And now? He looked at me again. Direct. Steady. It does. There was no hesitation that time. No pause. Nothing edited. And somehow, that made it heavier. I swallowed, my throat suddenly a little dry. Yeah, I admitted. It does. The air between us shifted again. Subtle, but undeniable. Your turn, he said after a moment. I frowned slightly. What? You asked me something. I ask you something. I huffed a quiet laugh. You're really committing to this. Yeah, he said simply. I shook my head, but there was a small smile pulling at the corner of my mouth. Fine. I looked ahead for a second, then back at him. Why didn't you ever send a picture? He didn't even flinch at that. Same reason you didn't, he replied. That's not an answer. It is, he said. But I'll make it clearer. He shifted slightly closer, not enough to touch, but enough that I felt it. I didn't want to know if I'd be attracted to you, he said. That caught me completely off guard. What? He held my gaze. Because if I was, he continued, it would have changed everything. My heart did something weird in my chest. And now? I asked, my voice lower without meaning to be. Another pause. But this one felt different. Shorter. Sharper. I am, he said. Just like that. No build-up. No softening. Just honest. And suddenly, the space between us didn't feel like space anymore. It felt like distance. The kind that was very easy to close. I didn't move. Neither did he. But we were both aware of it now. Completely. You're making this difficult. I muttered, letting out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Isaac's lips curved slightly. I think it was already difficult. Yeah, I admitted. Another second passed. Then two. And I don't know what exactly shifted, but something did. Because this time, I was the one who moved first. Not much. Just enough to turn slightly toward him, closing that invisible gap by a fraction. But it was enough. His eyes dropped for a second, not away, just lower. Like he noticed it too. Then back up. And yeah, there it was again. That same tension. Stronger now. Real. Benjamin, he said quietly. The way he said my name this time. It wasn't like before. It wasn't just recognition. It was something else. Something that made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. Yeah. I answered. He held my gaze for a second longer. Like he was deciding something. And whatever it was, I had a feeling things were about to change again. I didn't realize I'd stopped breathing until he said my name. Benjamin. It wasn't loud. It wasn't urgent. But it held something deliberate. Like he'd already decided what came next and was just giving me a second to catch up. Yeah. I said, quieter than before. He didn't answer immediately. Of course he didn't. But this time, the pause felt different. Not uncertain. Not careful. Focused. His eyes flicked down again, just for a second. My lips. Then back up. And yeah, that didn't go unnoticed. My chest tightened. You ever notice, he said slowly, that we always stopped right before things got like this? I swallowed. Yeah, I admitted. Online we had. There were moments. Late at night. Conversations that drifted closer to something neither of us named. And every single time, one of us would pull back. Change the topic. Make a joke. Reset. Safe again. But right now, there was no screen. No delay. No easy exit. And now, I asked, even though I already knew. He didn't look away this time. Now we don't have to. That was it. That was the line. The one we'd been circling for months without crossing. And suddenly, it didn't feel far away at all. I felt my pulse pick up, steady but heavy, like every beat was louder than it should be. You're sure about that? I asked, my voice low. Isaac's expression didn't change much. But his eyes did. Are you? He countered. That hit me right back. Fair. I let out a slow breath, running my hand over the back of my neck, trying to ground myself for a second. Because this wasn't just attraction. That would have been easier. This was layered. Built over time. Conversations. Trust. Late-night honesty. And now this. I looked at him again. Really looked. And yeah, there wasn't hesitation anymore. Not the kind that mattered. I wouldn't still be sitting here if I wasn't, I said. That small shift in his expression came back. Not a full smile. But something real. Good, he said quietly. Another second passed. Then, he moved. Not fast. Not sudden. Just closer. And this time, the space between us actually disappeared. His knee brushed mine first. Light. Barely anything. But it grounded everything. made it real in a way nothing else had yet. I didn't pull away. Neither did he. You can still stop this, he said, voice lower now. I huffed a quiet breath, shaking my head slightly. You're really giving me an out right now? I'm making sure, he replied. I turned my head toward him fully now, close enough that I could see every small detail I hadn't noticed before. The way his lips pressed together slightly when he was thinking. The faint tension in his jaw. You don't need to, I said. His eyes searched mine for a second, like he was checking, making sure I meant it. I did. Okay, he said softly. And that was it. No countdown. No dramatic pause. Just, he leaned in, slow enough that I could have pulled back if I wanted to, close enough that I felt his breath before anything else. And then, contact. It wasn't rushed, wasn't messy. It was careful, like we were both figuring it out at the exact same time. His lips were warm, softer than I expected, and for a second, my brain just stopped. No overthinking, no analyzing, just that. I felt my hand shift slightly against the bench, fingers curling instinctively like I needed something to hold on to. He didn't push further, didn't deepen it right away, just stayed there, let it settle, and that somehow made it hit harder. Because it wasn't just physical, it felt like confirmation. Everything we'd been building was real. After a second, maybe two, he pulled back slightly. Not far, just enough that I could see his face again. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. His forehead almost brushed mine as he stayed close, breath still uneven. Yeah, he murmured. I let out a quiet breath, something between a laugh and disbelief. Yeah, I echoed. There was this weird moment right after. Not awkward, just intense in a different way. Like we'd crossed something, and now we were both standing on the other side of it, figuring out what that actually meant. I glanced away for a second, exhaling slowly, trying to steady myself. That definitely made things more complicated, I muttered. Isaac huffed a quiet laugh beside me. Yeah, he said. A little. I looked back at him. Regret it. His answer came immediately. No. Not even a second of hesitation. I nodded once. Good. Because yeah. Me neither. Another pause settled in, but this one felt lighter somehow. Not because things were simple now, but because they were clear. And that mattered more. After a moment, Isaac leaned back slightly, but his legs stayed against mine. Intentional this time. So, he said, glancing at me again. Now what? I smirked faintly. That seems to be our thing tonight. Yeah, he admitted. We should probably figure it out at some point. Probably. I looked ahead for a second, then back at him. But not tonight. He raised an eyebrow slightly. No. I shook my head. Tonight. I paused, then added, quieter. I think we just let this be what it is. He studied me for a second, then nodded. Yeah, he said. I can do that. And for the first time since this whole thing started, it didn't feel like we were waiting for something to happen. It felt like it already had, and we were just finally letting it. We didn't kiss again right away, and somehow that made it worse. Or better. I still haven't decided. Because now everything was different, but nothing had actually changed around us. Same bench, same quiet park, same distant city noise. Just us, and the fact that I could still feel it. That lingering warmth, that shift in the air. The awareness of him next to me in a way that wasn't there before. So we're just gonna sit here like nothing happened? I asked after a minute, glancing at him. Isaac tilted his head slightly. Did you want something else to happen? There was a hint of something in his voice. Not teasing exactly, just aware. I huffed a quiet laugh, looking away for a second. You're doing that thing again. What thing? Answering a question with another question. He smirked faintly. It works. Yeah, well, it's annoying. Noted. I shook my head, but there was no real bite to it. Another small silence settled in, but it wasn't heavy anymore. Just charged. I shifted slightly, my leg still pressed against his. This time, I didn't even pretend it was accidental. You know what's actually weird? I said. What? I thought meeting you would make things less intense. He raised an eyebrow. Less? Yeah, I said. Like it would ground it. Make it more normal. And I glanced at him. It did the opposite. That got a quiet exhale out of him, almost a laugh, but not quite. Yeah, he said. Same. We sat with that for a second. Then Isaac leaned his head back slightly, looking up at the sky, like he was giving himself a moment to think. I think it's because now there's no filter, he said. Before, there was always a screen. A delay. Time to think. And now, he turned his head just enough to look at me again. Now I can see how you react to things. My chest tightened slightly. And I asked. He studied me for a second. Now I know when something actually affects you. I let out a quiet breath. You already knew that. Not like this. There was something in the way he said it. Something more certain. I didn't respond right away. Because yeah, he wasn't wrong. You're not exactly subtle either, I muttered. His lips curved slightly. I'm not trying to be. That landed. Harder than it should have. I looked at him again, more directly this time. And what exactly are you trying to be? Another one of those pauses. But this one didn't feel like hesitation. It felt like choice. Honest, he said. Simple, clear, and way more dangerous than anything else he could have said. I swallowed, my fingers tightening slightly against the edge of the bench. Okay, I said quietly. Then be honest. His eyes didn't leave mine. I am. No, I shook my head slightly. Fully. That made something shift in his expression. Not surprise. More like recognition. Like he understood exactly what I was asking. What do you want right now? I asked. There it was. No hiding behind jokes. No redirecting. Just direct. Isaac held my gaze. Didn't look away. Didn't soften it. And this time, he didn't pause. You. That word hit harder than anything else tonight. Because it wasn't vague. Wasn't complicated. Wasn't dressed up in anything else. Just that. I felt my breath catch slightly, my pulse kicking up again in a way that was impossible to ignore now. Yeah. I said, my voice lower than before. Yeah. And the way he said it. Steady. Certain. It didn't leave much room for interpretation. I looked at him for a second longer. Then exhaled slowly. Okay. That was all it took. Because this time, neither of us waited. I turned toward him first. He met me halfway. And the second kiss wasn't careful. It wasn't hesitant. It was everything the first one wasn't. More certain. More grounded. Like we'd already crossed the line, and now there was nothing holding us back from actually feeling it. My hand came up instinctively this time, catching lightly against his wrist, not stopping him, just there. Anchoring. He shifted closer, and this time there was no space left between us at all. The world outside that bench. Gone. Didn't matter. Didn't exist. There was just this. And for a moment, that was enough. When we finally pulled back, it wasn't because we had to. It was because we needed to breathe. I let out a quiet exhale, my forehead dropping forward slightly before I caught myself, shaking my head with a small, disbelieving laugh. Yeah, okay, I muttered. Isaac huffed softly beside me. Yeah. I glanced at him again, and this time there was no confusion in his expression. No hesitation. Just clarity. And something deeper under it. Something that had been there from the start. We just hadn't let ourselves fully see it yet. You realize, I said, still catching my breath slightly. This is not simple anymore. He leaned back, just enough to look at me properly. I never thought it would be. Yeah, but now it's real, he finished. I stopped. Because yeah, that was the word. Yeah, I said quietly. Real. Another pause. But this one didn't feel uncertain. It felt like we were both standing in the same place now. No guessing. No pretending. Just here. Isaac glanced away for a second, then back at me. So, he said, softer this time. You still don't want to figure it out tonight. I shook my head, a small smile pulling at my lips. No. Good. I raised an eyebrow slightly. Why is that? He held my gaze for a second. Because I'd rather just stay here with you. And yeah, that did it. Because for the first time since all of this started, it didn't feel like we were building towards something. It felt like we were already in it. At some point, we stopped talking altogether. Not in a weird way. Just naturally. Like neither of us felt the need to fill the silence anymore. Isaac was still sitting closer than before, actually. Our shoulders brushed now, not by accident, not something either of us tried to fix. His arm rested along the back of the bench again, but this time it felt different. More intentional. Like if I leaned back even slightly, I'd end up right against him. And the thing is, I almost did. You're thinking too much again, he said quietly. I glanced at him. You can tell. He gave me a small look. I've been able to tell for months. I huffed under my breath. Yeah, fair. But I didn't deny it. Because he was right. My head was running through everything at once, what this meant, what happens next, how something that started so casually somehow turned into this. And the worst part? I didn't hate it. That's what made it dangerous. What are you thinking about? He asked. I hesitated, then decided screw it. You, I said. His eyebrow lifted slightly. That's vague. Not really, I replied. Just how this happened. How we went from random messages to sitting here like this. He didn't answer immediately. but I felt his attention shift. Fully. Does it bother you? He asked. I shook my head. No. That came out easier than I expected. Then what is it? I exhaled slowly, leaning back just a little. And yeah, this time, I did brush against him. His arm didn't move. Didn't pull away. It just stayed there. And that did something to me I wasn't prepared for. It's just a lot, I admitted. Too much. I glanced at him. No. I said again, quieter this time. Just enough to matter. That seemed to land. Because he didn't respond right away. And for once, neither of us rushed to fill the space. After a moment, I felt it. His hand shifting slightly behind me. Not touching yet. Just there. Close. Like he was giving me the choice. And yeah, I noticed. Of course I did. I could feel it without even looking. My chest tightened just slightly. Because this was different. Not a kiss. Not a moment that just happened. This was slower. More intentional. I tilted my head back just a little. Not fully. Just enough. And that was all it took. His hand settled lightly against my shoulder. Warm. Steady. Not gripping. Not pulling. Just there. And somehow that felt more intense than anything else so far. I let out a slow breath, my eyes closing for half a second before I opened them again. Yeah, I muttered quietly. Isaac's voice came just as low. Yeah. We stayed like that for a moment. Neither of us moving. But everything shifting. You realize, I said after a second, my voice softer now. This is the part where things usually go wrong. He didn't pull his hand away. Why? Because this is where it stops being easy, I said. Where expectations show up. Where people start overthinking and ruin it, he finished. I gave a small nod. Yeah. He was quiet for a second. Then don't. I blinked slightly, turning my head toward him. Don't what? Don't ruin it, he said simply. I huffed a quiet laugh. Oh, that's helpful. I'm serious, he added, his thumb shifting just slightly against my shoulder, not moving. Just there? Why are we trying to figure out everything right now? I frowned faintly. Because that's what people do. Yeah, he said. And look how that usually goes. Okay. Fair. I exhaled slowly, looking ahead again. You're saying we just don't think about it? I'm saying we don't overcomplicate something that's actually pretty clear. I turned my head slightly toward him again. Clear how? His eyes met mine. And this time, there was no hesitation at all. We like each other, he said. Simple. Direct. And honestly, kind of impossible to argue with at this point. I swallowed slightly. Yeah. And we didn't force this, he continued. It just happened. Another nod. Yeah. So why are we acting like that's a problem? I didn't answer right away. Because I didn't have one. Not a real one. Just fear. The kind that shows up when something actually matters. I'm not saying it's a problem, I said quietly. Then what is it? I hesitated. Then. It's just new, I admitted. And real. And I don't want to mess it up. There. That was it. Isaac watched me for a second. Then his expression softened slightly. Not dramatically. Just enough. You won't, he said. I frowned faintly. You don't know that. I do. How? He held my gaze. Because you care. That hit harder than I expected. And for a second, I didn't have anything to say back. Because yeah, that was exactly the issue. I did. And I had no idea when that started. Or how deep it actually went. But sitting there, with him, it felt obvious. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head slightly. You're making this very hard to ignore. His lips curved just a little. Good. I rolled my eyes, but there was no real resistance left in it. Yeah, good. And without really thinking about it, I leaned into him slightly. Not a lot. Just enough. And this time, he didn't just let it happen. His hand shifted just a little more securely against me. Still gentle. Still not forcing anything. But no longer unsure. And for the first time that night, I stopped thinking about what this could become. And just let myself be in it. I don't remember exactly when we decided to leave the park. It wasn't a conversation. There wasn't a we should go. It just happened. At some point, the air got colder, the night quieter, and staying there started to feel less like a moment and more like something we were holding on to a little too tightly. So we stood up, slowly, like neither of us wanted to break whatever had settled between us. You heading back? Isaac asked. I nodded. Yeah. My friends are probably wondering if I disappeared. He huffed a quiet laugh. Same. We didn't start walking right away. Just stood there for a second, facing each other. And suddenly, it felt different again. Not tense. Not uncertain. Just aware. Of everything. So this is the part, I said, where we either pretend this was a random night or Or we don't, he finished. I met his eyes. Yeah. Another pause. But this one didn't feel like a gap. It felt like a decision. I don't want this to be random, he said. Simple. No hesitation. I let out a slow breath. Good, I replied. Because neither do I. There it was. Clear. Out in the open. No more hiding behind, we'll see. Or maybe. Just yes. We both stood there for another second, like that answer needed time to settle. Then Isaac shifted slightly, glancing down the street before looking back at me. So what does that mean, he asked. I smirked faintly. You're asking me? You started it. Fair. I thought about it for a second, but not the overthinking kind. Not the kind that spirals. Just honestly. It means we don't go back to pretending we're strangers online, I said. And we don't act like this didn't happen. He nodded once. Agreed. And, I added, we actually see each other again. Like, intentionally. That got a small smile out of him. Intentionally, he repeated. Yeah. Another beat passed. Then, okay, he said. And something about that felt solid. Like we'd just set the first real piece of this into place. We walked back together. Not too close. Not distant either. Just side by side. Comfortable. Easy in a way that surprised me, considering everything that had just happened. When we got closer to the bar, the noise started bleeding back into the night again. Voices, music, people moving in and out. Reality, I guess. We slowed down a little. Neither of us said it out loud, but we both knew this was where things split again for now. So, I said, stopping just short of the entrance. This is me. Yeah, he said, stopping with me. Another pause. God, we had a lot of those. But this one felt different. Like a quiet before something that mattered. You gonna text me? I asked. Or just disappear now that you've confirmed I'm real? His lips curved slightly. I think we're past disappearing. Good answer. He held my gaze for a second longer. Then, hey, he said, a little softer. Yeah. I meant what I said earlier. I frowned slightly. About what? That I didn't want this to be random. Something in my chest tightened again. But not in a bad way. Yeah, I said. I know. Another second. Then he stepped just a little closer. Not much. But enough. Just making sure, he added. I let out a quiet breath, then shook my head slightly. You don't have to, I said. I'm still here, aren't I? That earned me that look again. The one that felt way too direct. Yeah, he said. You are. And then, one last kiss. Shorter this time. Less about figuring anything out. More like confirmation. Like sealing something we'd already agreed on without saying it out loud. When he pulled back, there was no hesitation. Just a small nod. I'll text you, he said. You better. He smirked slightly at that, then stepped back. And just like that, he turned and walked off. I stood there for a second, watching him go. Not in a dramatic way. Not like something was ending. More like something had just started. Later that night, lying in bed, my phone buzzed. I didn't even have to check to know who it was. Still, I did. Isaac. Made it home. Still real. I stared at the message for a second, a small smile pulling at my lips before I typed back. Me. Yeah. You. The reply came almost instantly. Isaac. Yeah. A pause. Then another message. Isaac. Told you I wouldn't disappear. I exhaled slowly, staring at the screen. Then typed. Me. Good. Because I don't think I could go back to before this. There was a longer pause this time. Not uncomfortable. Just real. Then. Isaac. Me neither. And that was it. No big speech. No dramatic ending. Just 2 words. But somehow, they meant everything. I thought finding him in real life would change things. And it did. Just not in the way I expected. Because it didn't ruin what we had. It didn't make it awkward or forced or less real. If anything, it proved that it was real. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't wondering what could happen next. I was actually looking forward to finding out.